Warning, this video contains strong language that may be offensive to some viewers. Please be advised. Otherwise, please enjoy. Juno arrives at the sole headquarters of the association. He is there to teach the hunters a lesson for putting him through hell. He thinks about how he is now dealing with the aftermath of the incident from a few days ago. The cleaning team is waiting for the hunters to leave the dungeon so they can begin working. Two hunters have just stepped out of the dungeon, and they remark, "Yuck, the stench." The hunter with the buzz cut, also known as Hunter Steve, makes a comment about how they are being welcomed back to this world by the revolting stench. The hunter with the long crew cut, also known as Hunter Chris, refers to the stench as a trademark of the cleaning team. Hunter Steve walks into Sang-hyuk and says to him, "Out of my fucking way." Soyeon and Sang-hyuk watch them walk away, as they continue to talk trash about the cleaning team. "Look at them watching us, yeah, what the hell are they gonna do? It's their fault for not knowing their place, and messing with another team's budget. They should have stayed in their place and just clean up after us. Honestly, I'd rather get a part-time job than be a cleaner." Sang-hyuk finally loses it. He begins shouting, "Those fuckers, I will," and then, someone interjects and says something to the hunters. "Hey both of you, which division are you from?" The hunters turn around and see Minju Kim. However, they don't recognize who she is. Hunter Steve asks her who she thinks she is talking to. Hunter Chris tells her to get lost, before he loses his temper. Minju's expression darkens, and she speaks to them in a scary tone. "I asked you. Which division are you from?" Hunter Steve mocks her, and tells her that she wouldn't know if they told her. Hunter Chris tells him to wait, and tries to calm him down, because he just realized who they are talking to. Hunter Steve questions him why. Hunter Chris calls him a dumbass, and tells him that's their superior, Minju Kim. They both immediately greet her and bow their heads. Minju tells them that she sees they both belong to her team. Hunter Chris tells her that he didn't realize she was their superior, and he apologizes to her. Minju asks them what they are sorry for, and she tells them that she didn't know that they were on her team either. She then tells them that that's really not what they should be apologizing for. She tells them that instead, they should be apologizing for being less than human. Minju leaves the two hunters and walks over to Soyeon and Sang-hyuk, and she asks them if they are all right. They both answer her yes. Minju apologizes to them about what happened, and she tells them that there have been guys like them among the newbies, and they act entitled and pretentious because they are now hunters, when in reality, they're barely able to reach the E-class rank. Soyeon assures Minju that they are fine. Hunters Chris and Steve are left feeling distraught about what went down. They turn their heads, and glare at Sang-hyuk and Soyeon with growing resentment. Moments later, Guntae and Juno arrive. Guntae greets everyone with a big smile and says good morning to everyone. He then turns to Minju, and acknowledges her for being here as always, and he asks her if they should get right down to business. Minju tells him that she is actually here today, to bid them farewell. She then bows her head and thanks him for everything he has done for her. Guntae remarks, "Oh gosh, no, don't thank me." He tells her that they should be the ones thanking her, and he says, "Thank you miss, for your hard work." Juno is thinking about how it's been only a week since Minju Kim began helping the cleaning team with their duties, and how she is a quick learner. Nonetheless, her time with the cleaning team has come to an end. Minju tells Guntae no, she is the one who is grateful for having met such great people. Soyeon calls out to Minju with tears in her eyes. She tells her to make a promise that she will come visit them sometime. Minju replies, "Certainly." Juno thinks about how they've practically become sisters, and how everyone is sad to see Minju leave, except for him. Because he told her to leave yesterday. Juno tells Minju that she doesn't need to show up to work, starting tomorrow. He sees the doleful expression on her face, and guesses that she must be in shock. However, she would soon learn what it really meant. No more cleaning meant, he approves of her. Afterwards, he helped her plan out her conquest schedules, based on his knowledge and experience. As long as she can follow through, she'll reach A rank status within half a year. Juno has realized that he is far from building the career that he once had in his previous life anyway. So, he has decided. His ultimate plan is to train Minju Kim and nurture her to be the greatest hunter. He will then use her as a means of negotiation with the association. Juno begins laughing deviously in his thoughts. He recalls what Minju asked him at the hospital in his previous life. "You asked me if you meant anything more than a disposable to me?" Well, the answer is, you're nothing more than a disposable in this life as well. While Minju is taking copious notes, Juno gets carried away by his own thoughts. And then, Minju calls out to him. Juno is caught off guard. He asks her what. With a warm smile, she says, "Thank you, truly. I doubt you will, but if you ever need my help, give me a call." Juno is a little taken aback by her sincerity. He wonders if she has always been this cheerful. He stutters, "All right." The day after Minju left the cleaning team, the hunters' retaliation against the cleaning team began. Back to present day, at the sole headquarters of the association. Hunters Chris and Steve are hanging out in an office, and they begin talking about Gunte. Hunter Chris tells Hunter Steve that the old cleaner man who came in yesterday was a good laugh. Hunter Steve says it was hilarious how Gunte was basically begging for them to be nice to the cleaning team. They don't notice Juno has entered the room. Hunter Chris says, "That is why you don't ever mess with the hunter team's budget, especially if you're some cleaner." He continues to say that the cleaners are no match for them anyway, until Juno bashes him in the face. Hunter Steve jumps out of the chair. He exclaims, "What the hell?" and he asks Juno who the hell he is. Juno turns his attention to Hunter Steve. Hunter Steve screams and calls him a lunatic. He quickly activates his necromancer skill and calls Juno a piece of cleaner shit and tells him that he is messing with the wrong person. When the Grim Reaper manifests from his necromancer skill, he tells Juno that he's fucked and calls him a cleaner bug. The Grim Reaper swings its scythe at Juno, and Juno dodges it. Hunter Steve begins to activate his unique skill, Death Assault, and he questions Juno how he dares to mess with a hunter. He tells him he is so busted, and he will show him not to mess with them. Juno cuts him off, "Enough with the bullshit." He swings his arm, and clobbers both the Grim Reaper and Hunter Steve at the same time with his hand, while shouting, "How dare you use a skill on me?" Hunter Chris is lying on the floor, and he is barely conscious, and Hunter Steve is holding his face because it's throbbing with pain. Juno asks them if it's all fun and games to them. And he tells them that not even kids these days behave as foolishly as them. He then asks Hunter Steve if he didn't get proper hunter training, and how he dared to use his skills on a civilian, off dungeon grounds. Hunter Steve tells Juno to speak for himself. He asks him if he thinks the association will let him get away scot-free after assaulting a hunter, and Juno cuts him off. He tells him to shut that E-ranked mouth up before he slaps some sense into him, and he raises his hand. Hunter Steve quickly cowers and shields his face with his arms, and he shouts, "I'm sorry." Hunter Steve is petrified, out of his mind. Juno remarks, "So much for a hunter," and he tells him that he is too big of a wimp to be one. He crouches over to him, and tells him to listen carefully, while tapping on his face. He tells him that starting today they won't be cleaning up the abomination of a mess they left in the dungeon, and everything they've done will be splashed across headlines and all over social media. He then tells him that that'll liven up their hunter career, and he asks him if he agrees. Hunter Steve asks him if he really thinks the association will let him off the hook after that. And he tells him that the association has always sided with the hunters. Juno changes his tone. "You don't really believe the association will cover for your ass, do you? Especially when you're nothing but your anchors?" He then tells him that he expects them to come and apologize directly to the cleaning team, if they don't want to make matters worse. Hunter Steve asks Juno if he doesn't think that's going overboard. He's thinking, at least, let me save face. Juno puts on a very scary face, and says to him, if that's the case, then he'll take it that he's calling for a match in the dungeon, with all skills out the door. Hunter Steve yelps in terror. And then suddenly, Suyan Lee walks into the room, and he asks what's with all the racket here. He is shocked to see the entire room is in disarray. Hunter Chris is lying on the floor and is incapacitated. Hunter Steve is on his knees with a hand imprint on his face. A random Grim Reaper's skull is rolling on the floor, and there's Juno. Juno is also in shock. He thought Suyan Lee was away on a business trip. Apparently, the hunters lied to Guntae when he came to talk to them yesterday. Juno is completely caught off guard, and he worries that this is going to screw things up for him. However, Suyan Lee asks Juno what brings him here, and he addresses him Mr. Kim. He then asks him if the budget was not up to his standards, and this time, he addresses him Sir. Juno is taken aback by his courtesy behavior towards him. He wonders, what's up with this dude? He tells him that those guys put on a stupid act during their conquests. Suyan Lee replies, an act, sir? Juno says, that's right, and tells him that they scattered monster carcasses all over the place, and wrote on the walls with the blood. So, he was just checking in, to see if they had a problem with the cleaning team. Hunter Steve quickly gets over to Suyan Lee's side, and he exclaims that's a lie, and says that bastard threw swings at them just out of the blue. And then, Suyan Lee smacks him hard on the face, and yells at him, who do you think you're calling a bastard? Are you out of your goddamn mind? He then turns to Juno, and apologizes to him for what just happened, and he also apologizes to him on behalf of his hunters, and he tries to laugh it off. Juno is completely in shock, he has no idea what just happened. Meanwhile, Hunter Steve is on his way to join Hunter Chris on the other side. Juno tries to play it cool. He tells him alright, and to keep an eye on them if he will. He then excuses himself, and begins walking. Suyan Lee replies, yes sir, and tells him to watch his step. Right before Juno walks out the door, he stops to tell Suyan Lee something that he just thought of. Oh, and one more thing. I don't ever want to see those guys around. Later in the evening, Juno is thinking about how things wrapped up nicely after his visit to the association office. However, there was one thing he did not understand. The change in Suyan Lee's behavior. Juno asks Minju if she has any guesses as to why. She tells him that she just returned from her week-long vacation, so at the moment, she isn't sure. She remarks how those hunters are pathetic. She guesses that their actions reflect their ranks. Juno tells her that at least they got a proper apology. They must have learned their lesson, so they can just hope that they don't ever make the same mistakes again. Minju replies, well, that is, if they can ever make it back. She tells him that they've been fired. Minju tells him that they were both fired. Juno wonders if it's because of what he said. Not one, but two hunters fired, all because of a single complaint from a mere cleaner? He knew there was something off about Suyan Lee. His polite attitude was just bizarre. He wonders what he is up to. And then, the next morning, Juno exclaims, just what the hell? Hunters have gathered outside the dungeon to greet the cleaning team. They shout, we appreciate your hard work, and they bow their heads to the cleaning team. One of the hunters thanks them in advance for the cleanup. Juno is still taken by surprise. He replies, yeah, good work today, Strategy and Operation Team 1. And a hunter thanks him. The hunter's bizarre behavior continued on, after every conquest. They would stay behind to greet the cleaning team with excessive courtesy, and the cleaning team would find their jobs pretty much already done. In some cases, the hunters have gathered all the monster carcasses in one pile, and cleaned the boss's room, spick and span. Soyeon remarks that this isn't quite easy to get used to. Guntae says, he's been a cleaner for 10 years, and he never seen the Strategy and Operation team behave this way. Sang-hyuk remarks that they might even take over the strategy and operation team at this rate. Guntae tells him not to be so full of himself, and he says Juno did all the work. Sang-hyuk tells him that he was just kidding, and that of course he knows Juno is the one who did all the work. Soyeon tells Juno that she appreciates that he is siding with them, but she is a bit worried to be honest. Juno wonders what Soyeon is on about. Who is he siding with? Soyeon tells him that she's worried he'll have to face the consequences by himself. Juno asks her what she is referring to. She tells him that the hunters may be walking on eggshells at the moment, but he never knows who is out there to get him. Juno tells her that they won't retaliate, unless it's a hunter with one hell of guts. So there's no need to worry, at least not for now. He thinks so, especially after all the commotion he made. Soyeon asks him if he really thinks so. She then tells him that after all, he did nothing wrong. Sang-hyuk interjects and says that he just doesn't get it. He tells Juno that he went right up to the general manager, and that not only did he increase their budget, but also got hunters fired on the spot with a single remark, and now, he has the strategy and operation team 1, walking on eggshells. Juno tells him to get to the point. Sang-hyuk asks him if he is one of those, the big shots, who even the higher-ups don't stand a chance against. Juno is at a loss for words. And then, he busts out laughing. He walks away with a smirk and tells Sang-hyuk to stop with the nonsense, and everyone to get back to work. Sang-hyuk is fuming with embarrassment. He tells Juno that he could have just said no, and he asks him what's with the scoff. Juno is thinking, big shot my ass, like I'd be stuck here cleaning if I were one. Meanwhile, Soo-yeon Lee is in his office, and he is looking as gaunt as ever. Suddenly a man walks in, and says that he heard he's been sucking up to the cleaning team recently. Soo-yeon Lee lets out an exasperation. He swears that man's got unnecessarily big ears. This man is Dung Ben Lim, and he is the head of strategy and operation team 2. He is a year senior to Soo-yeon Lee, and apparently, his outstanding trait is his nosiness. Dung Ben Lim remarks, so the head of strategy and operation team 1 is sucking up to some cleaners. Soo-yeon Lee yells at him to keep his mouth shut, as if he doesn't have a clue. He asks him if he is even aware who that guy on the cleaning team really is. Dung Ben Lim brushes him off, and tells him that he has heard all about it, and he questions, backed by the chairman himself? He then tells him that this is why connections don't really last in the industry, and that he wouldn't be fearing big shots and whatnot if he had gotten his position by his own merits, like him. Soo-yeon Lee loses his patience. He yells him to quit it already, and if he's here to pick a fight, now isn't the right time. Dung Ben Lim remarks that he sees that he's still got a temper. He then leans over to Soo-yeon Lee to put a potato chip in his mouth, and he tells him that he can get it sorted out for him. Soo-yeon Lee asks him what he is referring to. Dung Ben Lim says, that cleaner from the association, who doesn't know his place. He tells him to leave it up to him, and to let him take care of this as his superior. Soo-yeon Lee asks him what his plan is. Dung Ben Lim tells him that it's nothing big, and that they would just be following the protocol. He then says that there is no way the cleaner will survive a fatal mistake, even with the chairman's connection. Soo-yeon Lee jumps out of his chair, and asks him if the cleaning team screwed up. Dung Ben Lim tells him no, not yet, but they will make them. Soo-yeon Lee thinks he is a lunatic. He wonders what Dung Ben Lim has up his sleeve this time. Soo-yeon Lee is feeling agitated. Dung Ben Lim tells him to think it through, and he asks him if he really wants to suck up to the cleaning team for the rest of his career. He reminds him that he's an elite, the leader of strategy and operation team 1, and he tells him that this is getting out of hand. Soo-yeon Lee tells him to never mind that, and he asks him what's the deal. Dung Ben Lim remarks, that's my man, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He tells him that he's not asking for much in return, and he asks him if his team is scheduled for a large-scale conquest next week, and he says that he hears that it will be a multi-zone dungeon in the Yeongdeungpo district. Soo-yeon Lee is taken aback by Dung Ben Lim's proposal, and he sees now what he is after. Multi-zone dungeon. a unique dungeon that emerges with an initial boss monster and reopens with a new boss monster after the previous one is defeated. Normally, the dungeon would be a standard green rank, however, this type of dungeon is ranked exceptionally difficult because it is impossible to leave the dungeon until all the bosses have been subjugated. A multi-zone dungeon campaign requires at least 2 months of preparation. Dung Ben Lim tells him to pass it over to them. Suyang Li slams on the table and he shouts that he is out of his mind. Dung Ben Lim tells him that he doesn't have to. However, the general manager already approved of it, and he was told to talk it through with him. Suyang Li knows that Dung Ben Lim is someone who always takes all the credit by stealing other people's performances. He also knows that, right now he can't risk getting himself directly involved with the cleaning team. He thinks about how the upcoming campaign isn't the only large-scale conquest anyway. It'd be a win for him if that carpetbagger ends up getting rid of the cleaning team. Suyang Li bites the bullet and says it's a deal, and he tells him to make sure he doesn't get caught in the crossfire of it all. Dung Ben Lim says of course, and he tells him that he knew he could count on him. He then mentions that he has heard that there is a rising star on his team. He says, Minju Kim, and he tells him to lend her to him. Suyang Li is wondering, just where does this bastard hear about these things? He gives in and tells him to take whatever he needs, and he shoos him away. Later in the day, Juno is on his way home from work. He is sitting at the back of the bus, grinning with excitement as he reviews the remaining requirements for unlocking his skills. He remarks, easy peasy. He thinks about how things have changed since he first regressed into this body, and that it became less demanding to unlock his skills once he got the ball to start rolling. He reads the requirement for summoning a lower grade, new staff member on the cleaning team. He guesses it's a pass for now, because he heard that the cleaning team hasn't had any new applicants in months. He then reads the requirement for unlocking over immersion, initiate a joint project with another department. He wouldn't even have considered it before, but seeing the way the operation team is nowadays, he is thinking he might have a chance. He reads the unlocking requirement for overtime, and thinks a wage increase sounds impossible for now. He thinks what seems to be the most attainable right now is the requirement to unlock polymorph, raise public interest in the cleaning team. Suddenly his phone begins ringing. When he answers the phone, he hears Minju shout for him, Master. He asks her what the matter is. She tells him that they're scheduled for a large-scale conquest in a week, and that she was chosen as the leader of the subjugation squad. Juno wonders if she is referring to the multi-zone dungeon, and if there was a large-scale conquest held around this time in his previous life. He remarks, the leader of a large-scale conquest, and tells her that her value as a hunter is definitely skyrocketing. He is thinking that she is his pupil indeed. Minju exclaims, No, Master, that's not the point. She tells him that they want the cleaning team in on the conquest. Juno is in shock. The next day, at the association office, hunters are expressing their deep resentment towards the cleaning team. First our budget, next our job, now taking over our duty. They ask what the hell is the cleaning team doing here. They look at Juno, and say that they're to blame for not having connections like he has. It won't be long until the cleaners take over us hunters, sheesh. Juno isn't intimidated by their remarks. However, the same can't be said about the others. Soyeon asks the boss if he is alright. Guntae tells her that he's fine. He's just not used to this. One of the hunters tells everyone that, as shitty as the situation is, they should get seated now, because the meeting is about to start. Juno is feeling agitated. He is thinking, those petty low rankers are giving us so much shit, are they testing my patience? He then realizes how he just thought of them as low rankers. He asks Minju if multi-zone dungeons aren't supposed to be assigned to Team 1, and he says that those guys aren't from her team. Minju tells him he's right, and that it originally was supposed to be their project, and she heard that Suyang Li handed it over to Team 2. Juno is surprised to hear this. He asks her why Suyang Li would toss over such a substantial project to another team, especially when it must have taken months to prepare. Minju tells him she has no clue, and that she heard the team leaders got together for an exchange, but she doesn't know the details. Suddenly, a man makes a grand entrance into the room. As he announces himself, the leader of Strategy and Operation Team 2 is entering. He shouts, "Greetings everyone!" He tells everyone that he was appointed to be the head of the Yongdongpo project. Juno immediately recognizes him. That bastard. That's Dung Ben Lim. Juno hasn't forgotten about him. He remembers how Dung Ben Lim would take all the credit for his performances back when he was a rookie. In addition, he was notorious for mooching off on other people's projects. He sees now that Dung Ben Lim is the leader of Strategy and Operation Team 2. Minju notices Juno is very agitated, and she asks him what the matter is. Juno tells her to stay away from that asshole because she will gain nothing from him. Dung Ben Lim begins talking about the project. He informs everyone that the estimated time for this conquest is 24 hours, and that he is sure everyone is aware that they can't leave a multi-zone dungeon until all zones have been cleared. He tells everyone that if they want out, then they have until the end of the day to inform him. He then begins the briefing on the Yongdongpo project. He explains that the conquest will be divided into 3 groups, and since the conquest is expected to last 24 hours, the subjugated monsters will also begin to decompose during that time. Which means, the carcasses will release toxic gases that will most likely interfere with the conquest. He looks at Gunte and his team and says, that is where the cleaning team 3 comes in. He then tells them that since this is a large-scale project, they will be receiving a generous bonus as well, and he asks them if they are sure that they can do it. Gunte replies to him, "Yes sir." Juno is thinking that there isn't any reason for them to decline the offer. Not only is it a great opportunity to team up with the Strategy and Operation team, but they could also get a bonus and get right working on a dungeon they're probably going to be assigned to clean up anyway. In addition, it would be a perfect chance for him to unlock his over-immersion skill. He knows that if they don't take this opportunity, they might not get another chance to participate in a joint operation ever again. Because they're just a cleaning team. However, Juno speaks up and says he is sorry, and he tells him to not count them in. Dung Ben Lim's jaw drops to the ground, along with his lollipop. Juno is thinking, I would never help with that asshole's reputation. Not over my dead body. After the meeting, the cleaning team except for Juno stays behind to talk about what happened. They wonder why Juno rejected the offer, because it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Sang-hyuk says he wanted in as soon as he heard about the bonus. He asks the team if they think Juno was out. Minju asks Gunte what he thinks. Gunte says that he thinks Juno was just trying to look out for them. Minju tells him she agrees. She says that, although the briefing made it sound easy and simple, it is indeed a very dangerous operation. She explains that it is a 24-hour-long operation that goes on without any breaks, with more monsters than they can imagine. To be honest, she wanted to talk them out of it too. Gunte remarks that Juno must have foreseen the dangers of this operation. He must have rejected the offer knowing they'd accept it cluelessly. Soyeon and Sang-hyuk are feeling touched. Soyeon exclaims that she knew Juno was looking out for them. Sang-hyuk exclaims that Juno always makes them misunderstand his intentions, that he thought Juno rejected it just because he wasn't up for it. Gunte laughs and says that they all now know Juno's intentions, and that it's a shame, but their team will not be participating in the operation. Minju tells them that she is thinking of backing out as well. Gunte and Soyeon are shocked, and they begin to question her. Soyeon tells her that she can't, because she is the team leader of this operation. Gunte agrees, and he questions her if she is only doing it because of them. Minju tells them no, and explains that she wasn't entirely happy about it anyway, and that she felt like she wasn't skilled enough to be a leader yet. But most of all, the master told her not to get involved with that guy. She poses the question, what do we have masters for? She says that it's only right that she takes his advice. Guntae laughs, and tells her that it makes sense. Later that day, at the association office, Soo-yeon Lee is trying really hard to contain himself. He heard about what happened to Dung Ben Lim, how the cleaning team rejected him. He thinks it serves him right, and if only he got to see his dumbfounded face with his own eyes. He busts out laughing, and he tells Dung Ben Lim that he heard Juno fucked him up real bad. He then tells him how he told him that Juno is not some easy target, and he bets that Juno already knew what was going on. Dung Ben Lim isn't feeling amused. He tells him that if he is here to pick a fight, now isn't the time. Soo-yeon Lee continues laughing at him. He asks him if he thinks his team can pull it off on his own, and he tells him that he heard that even Minju Kim backed out from the operation. Dung Ben Lim tells him to screw off. Soo-yeon Lee continues to pour more salt on the wound. He asks him if he's not really thinking of hiring the civilian guild, because he already used up 200 million won, about 153,000 US dollars, in the budget, and he begins laughing hysterically. Dung Ben Lim slams on the table. He tells him to let him borrow his connections for once, and says he needs to get his hands on the required personnel list. Required personnel list is an official order that is issued under the authority of the general manager. Disobeying the order may result in disciplinary action, or even forced resignation. Dung Ben Lim questions how that inexperienced little jerk dares to piss him off. A few days later, the cleaning team learned that Dung Ben Lim got his hands on the required personnel list. Minju and the cleaning team had no choice but to participate in the conquest. Soyeon and Sang-hyuk are taken aback by the large crowd that had gathered outside the dungeon portal. A conquest of this magnitude would certainly catch the media's attention. They are not used to being in front of the cameras and the news reporters. Sang-hyuk is feeling nervous, and he asks if it means that they'll be interviewed. Guntae remarks that he would have gotten a clean shave if he knew they'd be here, and Soyeon wishes that she had showered this morning. Meanwhile, Juno is looking at Minju, and he notices how she is being awkward and silent. He calls her out on it, and tells her that she is the leader of this conquest. He asks her what's with that look on her face, and he asks her if she's nervous. Minju tells him, no kidding, because she's never done anything like this before. Juno pats her back and tells her to be brave, and to put on an act if she must, because the citizens will get anxious if they think the hunter looks nervous. He tells her to keep her chin up high. He then asks her how she is going to pull through in the actual conquest, if she is already this nervous. Minju tells him that she's fine and that she does better in real situations anyway. She tries to laugh it off, and Juno says, sure you do. He then tells her that, once they're in the dungeon, to keep her focus only on the monster subjugation and nothing else, not even on his team. Minju tells him to keep his radio on, just in case. Juno asks her if she plans on asking for help over the radio. Minju doesn't answer his question, and Juno looks at her with judgment. Juno sighs deeply, and tells her to call him, only when she thinks she's on the verge of death. Minju replies, yes master. Guntae rallies his team, and suggests that they perform a check on the supplies, before they head in. He asks them if all the chemicals and equipment are here. Juno tells him that they have 10 liters of hydrogen peroxide, diluted hydrochloric acid, and saline each. Soyeon says they have the vacuum compressor and EVA film compression pack ready as well, and she confirms that there are no issues with the goggles and respirators. Sang-hyuk confirms that they have enough food and water to last them as well. Guntae remarks, sounds good, and he lets them know that it's going to be tough, but there shouldn't be any issues as long as they do what they normally do. He then tells everyone to show some team spirit, and he begins shouting, come on, let's go! Meanwhile, 2 hunters nearby are laughing at the cleaning team. One hunter swears that, it seems like they enjoy making a fool out of themselves. And then, Dung Ben Lim makes an appearance. He tells Minju that he was wondering where she went off to, and that he sees that she was with the cleaning team. He tells her that he is hoping this conquest will be a great success, for the both of them. Minju tells him that she agrees. Soyeon tells Juno that Dung Ben Lim is someone she was not expecting to see today, and that she didn't think he'd be coming since Minju has been assigned as the leader. Juno tells her that it isn't very common, and that usually, when the team leader participates in the conquest, that person also serves as the leader. He says that sometimes, they appoint a competent hunter to lead conquests such as this one. Juno admits that Minju Kim is capable of leading a conquest. However, there's a real reason why Dung Ben Lim didn't take the lead. That is because, that dumbass has got no clue how to lead, out in the field. He's only ever planned operations, throughout his entire career, and never led any actual conquests. Instead, he has piggybacked off of other teams' conquests. Dung Ben Lim tells Minju that he'll be on site throughout the entire conquest. He lets her know she doesn't need to feel so anxious about her first time as a leader, and that she can just leave it all up to him if there's any problem. He turns to the cleaning team and wishes them good luck as well. He then reminds them that there must be no delay in the cleaning, and that they must proceed as scheduled. Juno tells him, yeah, they got it all figured out. Dung Ben Lim is roused by Juno's arrogant response, and he wants to see how long he can keep that attitude going. He turns away and says that he guesses everyone is here, and he tells Minju to go ahead and wrap things up. Minju calls for everyone's attention. She tells them that she is sure everyone knows this by now, but she will go over it once more. She says that the subjugation will be carried out by 3 teams, A, B and C. Once Team A subjugates the first zone, Team B will then begin to subjugate the next zone, and Team C will begin when Team B finishes. Their plan is to repeat this cycle until all subjugations in the dungeon are finished. She then tells them that, as they are well aware, this is a joint operation with the cleaning team. Since they are all experts, there is nothing for them to worry about. However, in case of an emergency, call the cleaning team for help. Everyone stands in silence with their jaws dropped to the ground. Juno wonders what she is saying, and Minju wonders what's with everyone's reaction. Dung Ben Lim tries to laugh it off, and tells Minju that she must be quite nervous. He asks her if she meant to say, call on the strategy and operation team for help. Minju disregards his remark, and turns her attention back to everyone. She tells them that nevertheless, to review the operation contents one last time. They will begin the operation when they are ready. Everyone sets their eyes on the swirling bright green light, in between the 2 pillars. Juno tells his team that they get going. For dungeon cleaning.